Hey, what's up, everybody? Today, I want to go through an example of the operationalization assignment. We're going to look specifically at the Billboard Hot 100, or we'll talk a little bit more about the data in a moment, but we're going to be gathering different characteristics about songs. So I want to share my screen so you can see, I'll see exactly what you're coming from. So here are the instructions, and the first thing you could do is start from this template. You don't necessarily have to start from the template, but I think it's a good way that you'd be able to very quickly and easily fill this out. So some of this information should look familiar, but you don't know. But for this project here, I'll fill it out. So the name of our media is going to be Popular Songs, Billboard 100. I can't spell. That's fine. Unit analysis, song. So each row in our data set is going to represent a unique song. So what we were going to do is we want to come up with at least 4 different variables or that measure characteristics of a song. So remember, the idea of conceptualization is that these entities or these different songs we're looking at have different characteristics that we want to understand. And the process of conceptualization is putting a name to those characteristics, especially when those characteristics represent more abstract ideas. And then the process of operationalization is to measure these concepts, however imperfectly that we're able to measure it. In class, we looked at TCNJ buildings, for example, and a characteristic of a building is its vibe. And that's a kind of a vaguer concept, conceptual understanding, in that we all know what it means to say that the building has a better or a worse vibe, or is better or worse for studying, etc. But there may be different ways to measure that. So in class, we went through and we came up with a few different ways to measure that. And that's what we'll be doing today. We're going to go through some we're going to operationalize some concrete variables for our songs. And we're also going to do a little bit of conceptualization and then operationalize some little more abstract ideas. So to get started, we're going to want our data. So the 2 things we're doing, we're going to fill out this worksheet, and we're also going to create an Excel sheet that just has the first 3 rows or observations. The main thing I'm looking at with this is that you are able to understand what your data set is going to ultimately look like. Again, we want the data set to be in tabular format, where each observation is a row. So each separate row is going to be a song. Each column is a variable or characteristic of the song, and each cell is a value or the observation's characteristic for that given row. So we're going to start here. I found this. Where did I find this? Spreadsheet here that's meant to track all the top songs in the Billboard 100. I just saw it on Twitter. Wish I could give credit for where I got it from. I'm gonna pause the video. I want to give a little bit of quick credit. I found it in the documentation. That's why we say to always read the documentation. It's maintained by one of the staff members at Talk of the Charts. I don't really know anything about Talk of the Charts. I just found the sheet by looking around. So you can see here, this is similar to what we would see as a code book, where it tells us different characteristics. So there's already some variables that are gathered, different characteristics about each of these songs that are already gathered. So if you go to our list here, you see each unit is a song, so each row is a song. One of the variables of the song is the year the song was published. I don't know what this one represents, but I imagine column B, information about the song. Year E through K, more information about the song. This documentation could maybe be a little bit better. Maybe your documentation will be better that you'll put together. This is listing how many weeks it was in the top 1, how many weeks it was in the top 3, how many weeks it was in the top 5, how many weeks it was on chart. Okay, great. This is all really good. I'm going to assume this is total. Actually, I have no idea what it is, so I'm just going to leave it blank for now. I'm just going to copy. I'm not going to copy all of these for the purpose of this, but if you find something like this you really like, and it already has the list of everything that you're going to be doing, you could certainly borrow from it. So I'm just going to borrow here and just go over weeks in the top 10 and just grab the first few amount of rows And I want to pop it into a Google Sheets so you can see how it would look like in your own sheet or in your own work. One other reason I recommend putting it all into your own sheet rather than just downloading whatever they have is that there may be some odd characteristics of the rows or different things they've embedded into the file that make it a little bit challenging to import it into R. So one of our examples here, remember, we need all of our variables to be single strings, ideally all lowercase. And there's just this extra column here. So I'm just going to delete this extra column and get things formatted as we've seen in the way we've talked about it in our previous assignments. Notice how each variable name, I didn't take away the substantive meaning of what the variable meant, but I shortened it, made it all lowercase in a single string. So here we go. We already have a few different observations. You only need 3 for this first for this assignment. And it doesn't really matter which 3 you pick. I'm just looking to see that you're able to put together a data set in tabular format. So we have here weekend binding. Let's drag this out so we can see it a little better. Chubby checker, the twist. And is this Smooth Criminal? No, what is this? Santana featuring Rob Thomas. The different years, etc. Oh, I messed up all these. I'll grab them real quick. What probably happened when I pasted them as they're probably a special format here. You see how these are formulas. We briefly showed formulas in class, but you certainly can use these formulas. But this is allowing it to automatically update and allowing their spreadsheet to automatically populate as they add new songs and change their data. So you can read through these formulas in Excel sheet. It'd be pretty cool to take a look at it. I'll share this link in the description. So instead, what I did is I just copied it. I pasted them as values, so got rid of the formula. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to come up with some different variables or different things we want to measure. Ultimately, in this assignment, we're going to be comparing the relationship between 2 different variables. So we're going to be asking if a song's characteristic in one variable relates to its characteristic on another variable. And there's different ways that could play out. I won't spend too much time talking about the down the line, but one thing I do want to mention is you want to start to think of some variables or concepts that you're really interested in about this medium. We want these variables to measure characteristics of the observation. So, for example, if we're looking at this, we wouldn't want a variable to be something that is not about a song, maybe something that's greater than the song. So, for example, we wouldn't want it to be the album, or yes, we could say artist. I guess artist could work. I'll give some examples of ones that we maybe wouldn't want as I can think of them. But for now, we want characteristics of the song. So what are some things that we're interested in about songs that vary across different songs? So it's a characteristic of a song that is different for different songs. So one thing, for example, we could think of is the genre of the song. So different songs are going to have different genres. This is still a little bit conceptual in that there are different ways that we could define genre. So we're going to name this the variable genre. And this concept that genre represents is also the genre of music. So we could think of, might be easier, we probably would be most likely think of genre as a quantitatively or qualitatively, but we could think of genre quantitatively. I'm open to that argument, but I think it's going to be easiest to think about genre as a qualitative characteristic of a song. So what we want to find is how can we measure the genre of music? So what we want to do is develop a coding scheme that is both exhaustive and that we can assign every single song a genre, and also mutually exclusive, and that every song can only have one genre. So I'm gonna give this a little bit of thought here, and I'm gonna pause the video, and I'll come back. I actually figured I'd show this because this could be a way, if you're trying to think of how you could do your coding scheme, I'll just show exactly what I did. I literally just Googled it, genres of music, and I'm looking through here and I'm trying to develop my own scheme. And we can see that there's different ways that we could draw from these. And sometimes a song could arguably overlap between multiple genres. So that's why it's kind of challenging to pick a scheme that is mutually exclusive and exhaustive. We could make separate variables for all of these different genres and saying, is the song in this genre or not? Separate binary variables with the value of 0 if it's not in the genre and 1 if it is in the genre. But I want to try to make one variable that can capture all of these. So maybe pick some of the big ones here. Maybe we'll do like rock, country. I'll pause and see if I can make sense of it. All right, so I spent a bit of time trying to think about how to conceptualize and operationalize the concept of genre and ran into a bit of trouble because as one thing I noticed is that to be on a lot of the one of the first genres I wanted to think about that categorizes all of these songs is most of them are forms of pop music. And there's a lot of ways we could think about pop music, and in some ways it's its own genre. Um, and also, I just generally don't think there's any objective way to categorize music into any mutually exclusive categories. I tried to make sense of it a few different ways of how the generalized other may think of it, but I'm really just not happy with it. And I was gonna restart this portion of the video, but I thought this was a good time to mention that this is a very common experience you'll probably go through when you try to do this assignment. This is really challenging to think of things that you can measure characteristics of these different observations and to conceptualize ideas about these characteristics and then operationalize ways of measuring those characteristics. It's a very challenging endeavor, especially to do it well. And so I would take this note to say that it's okay if you have to take a step back and maybe you pick one, you don't like it very much, you later abandon it, um, or if it's just not overall perfect, that is all part of this process. So I think I'm going to abandon genre and move on to the next one. Maybe I'll come back to it after I give it some more thought, but this is a semester-long project, and you'll have plenty of time to make some changes and add more variables, etc. So let's do an easier one that might be a little bit easier, or one that might be a little bit simpler. So we're going to call this gender. And what concept does gender represent? This is going to represent the main top 100. They probably all do have singing. So I'll put main singers, not gender identity. Let's do a qualitative variable. We could also consider a quantitative variable for the same concept. Maybe, for example, we do the ratio of men to women in the entire band or the entire group. But let's just do the main character singing identity, and we're going to assign this a variable of 1 if main character. And let's actually specifically call it woman led. Let's say I'm kind of curious. We're gonna pick some other variables later that measure other characteristics. I'm kind of curious about my own opinions and whether that's influenced by if the singer is woman led. So the singing is woman led. So I'm gonna measure a woman led where 0 is main singer, singers are not woman, or a woman. And we'll make it a binary variable where the main singer or singers are a woman. And this will or not woman or woman. And then we want to make this be mutually exclusive or include or a better way to language this. But we're only going to assign 1 if the main singers of the song is one woman or multiple women. That's all we're going to give one, and we're going to give 0 to everyone else. So if it's a combination of men and women, then we're going to give it a value of 0. And we're going to measure the variable by listening to the song or looking up the artist. Actually, by looking up the artist, probably a better way to get their gender. So let's do it. We're going to come back to our song here. The Weeknd, Blinding Lights. So let's take a look at local The Weeknd. Who is The Weeknd? Okay. I might need to listen to the song to know, but it looks like I want to do a little bit of, you want to do more research than I'm about to do here, but it looks like it's just one person. There's someone in the class doing their project on the weekend, so I should really know this, but anything here, it doesn't look like it's predominantly woman-led. So it's going to value of 0. Chubby Checkers, that is not woman-led. Rob Thomas, not woman-led. The Kid Leroy, is that man? Not a woman. I'd want to look into each of these things. I'm going to pause it and look through this very quickly to identify the gender of these different artists. All right, I went through and filled it out. Did it fairly quickly, but as far as what I saw, I think there's only 2 songs that are predominantly woman-led. There were some songs that did have women singers, but remember that we categorized this song as main singers are not women or main singers are woman. Now, as you're going through and you do a few examples, you only have to do 3 examples for now. But as you're going through in the future and gathering your data, you may find challenges to your variables coding scheme. There may be some observations that don't fit very neatly into your coding scheme, or you're just not really getting any variation across your coding scheme, or all of them, in other words, all of them have the same value. In which case, you may want to consider changing your coding scheme or changing your variables. So that's why we're doing, you could think of this as also kind of doing a trial run of starting to measure some of these variables. For example, if you're doing your song or your project on different scenes in a movie, you'd want to maybe watch the first 20 minutes of the movie with your coding schema and then revisit your coding schema, because you're probably going to find some mistakes or some errors in how you're measuring things. And then you'd go back and watch the rest of the movie to accurately gather, be at least more accurate in your depictions. So let's get another variable. This one is it's still a little less conceptual. Let's get one that's a little more conceptual. We could do emotional. So let's say I'm really curious in how different songs make me emotional or not. So I'm gonna put this as emotional, and we're gonna do this as a scale. Song makes me. So I'm gonna do this specifically for me. You could conceptualize this as a different way. You could conceptualize of how emotional you perceive the artist to be in their song. I'm going to pick how emotional the song makes me, because it's a fairly valid measure. Yeah, fairly. It may not be that reliable, and then I may feel different emotionalness depending on when I listen to the song and what order I listen to the song. So probably not the most reliable measure, but I'm gonna go with it, because I personally feel like I'm better at knowing how emotional a song makes me than I am at knowing how emotional that the artist is, and trying to rank different artists in terms of their emotion doesn't seem something I'm very confident in my ability to do. Let's make a quantitative variable that we're going to measure as a how emotional, my personal rating. Listen to each song and personally rate how emotional it makes me. Scale of 0 to 100, where 50 is the average emotion I feel when listening to music. I call it variables coding scheme will be scale ranging from 0 to 100. I'll put the word quantitative scale in here. Zero being all 100 being incredibly emotional. Now, could we rank this on a with different on a different with different units? We could be how emotional that it makes me from 1 to 10. We could do how emotional it makes me from 5 to 63, where 20 is average. There's so many different ways that we could measure this. You want to have a good reason for how you're doing it, but it's most important that you're able to explain it and how you're going to go about and do it. Later in the year, you're going to have a peer replicate the creation of your data set. Whereas what they're going to do is you're going to tell them how you measured this variable, how you gathered the data, and you write up what's called a data and methods section. And then your peers are going to try to replicate that data set. So for example, if you were to they're going to try to gather they would have to listen to this and be like, how emotional song makes me. They'd have to try to rank it maybe how emotional they thought that the song would make me, or they could do it with themselves or they could do it with me, which is why it's not exactly the best net measure, because it's not very easy to replicate. But they'd if you had another thing with, say, genre, for example, you would expect that the person that you told them how you measured genre, then they would be able to replicate and sort songs into the same genre that you sorted them in. So if you gave this sheet to someone, they should be able to fill in the same sheet that you did. I'm gonna pause this. I'll listen to a couple of these songs and I'll rank them. All right, I'm back. And as I went through and listened to these songs, when I realized I was enjoying listening to these songs, I haven't heard a lot of them in a while. I haven't even heard some of them at all before. Uh, and I decided to change the variables, having a hard time measuring how emotional that a song was making, because I realized that songs made me feel different emotions. So this is actually is at first I was thinking maybe I wish I would have thought more about these variables before I made this video, but I think this is a good time to pause and reflect on why this assignment is so challenging, and that you may change your variables, you may change exactly what you're trying to measure, and it's okay to have this sort of back and forth process right now. That's something that if you're going through is totally expected. So I decided to change, instead of emotional, how pumped or how energized that the song made. So I went through and quickly listened to some snippets of the songs and rated from 0 to 100 on how energized the song made me. I called the variable pumped. Variable is called pumped. It measures how energized the song makes me feel on a quantitative scale from 0 to 100, where 50 is the average energy I feel when listening to music. And 100 is 0 is no energy at all. 100 is incredibly energized. So you can once you start to get a few different variables and concepts, it becomes a little bit easier. Now, for your final project, you're going to need at least 4 variables, 2 qualitative and 2 quantitative variables. However, I recommend that you gather any that you can think of. One, because you may end up really not liking some of them and choosing not to use them in your analysis in the future. And as you go to gather, you may not like it. So if you go to gather them and one of the variables really doesn't work or didn't work out the way as planned, then you have to go back and regather that entire piece of data. That may be really challenging if you're doing something like all of the scenes in a movie. You'd have to rewatch the movie. Also, right now, you may not understand exactly what we mean by bivariate statistics, in that what we're going to look at is how these variables overlap with each other. So you're going to be able to answer questions like, do woman-led songs make me more pumped up? Do songs that are newer or more recent make me more pumped up? Are songs that are more recent more likely to be woman-led? So we're asking how the covariation, this is a term we'll learn more in future modules, But the more variables you have, the more interesting research questions that you'll be able to answer, and the more enjoyable and rewarding your experience will be, and the easier time you'll have answering your final paper. So the minimum is 4 for now, but the more you get, the better. So after you finish with filling in your Excel sheet, again, you only need the first 3 rows. This is a good way to start thinking about how to gather it. I'm still looking to make sure that you can get things into tabular format. I know this is really challenging still, a way of formatting things that you may have never done before. So that's a reason I just want a few of these, but it's also to start thinking about how you're going to gather these things in the future. So you're going to submit this Word document and also the Excel sheet. They're the 2 things I'm looking for. Um, and yeah, as usual, email me if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.